In 2017, in Houston, Texas, a regular employee named David worked 10 hours a day. Despite working hard all year, nothing in his life seemed to change. One night, he stopped at a gas station. He only needed to withdraw $20. He inserted his card into the ATM. A message appeared on the screen: surcharge fee, $3.50. David couldn't help but say, $3.50 just to withdraw $20? He completed the transaction, got back into his car, but one question kept spinning in his mind. Where does that $3.50 actually go? The next day, that single question pushed him to start researching online. A few hours later, he discovered something that completely changed the course of his life. In the United States, thousands of ATMs aren't owned by banks. They're owned by ordinary people. And every time someone uses one of those ATMs, the owner earns money from each transaction. David slowly stood up from his chair and quietly said, "If other people can build a business like this, why can't I?" But he had no idea that simply buying an ATM wasn't enough. The real success was hidden in choosing the right location, using the right strategy, and having the patience to let the business grow. Over the next few days, David read everything he could find about the ATM business. That's when he realized simply buying an ATM wasn't enough. The real money came from choosing the right location. He started doing the math. A good ATM machine cost between $3,000 and $5,000. On top of that, he also needed enough cash to stock the machine, which meant he would need roughly $10,000 to $15,000 to get started. David looked at his savings and smiled. "I only have $6,000. But he refused to give up. For the next 6 months, he worked overtime, cut every unnecessary expense, and finally, he bought his first ATM. Now came the biggest question: where should he install it? A friend told him, just put the ATM anywhere. People will find it. But David made a rushed decision. He installed the ATM inside a small store in a quiet neighborhood. The first month came to an end. Only 38 transactions. The income was barely enough to cover electricity, service, and maintenance costs. David was discouraged. He started to wonder if the internet had exaggerated how profitable this business really was. Then one day, he met an experienced ATM operator. The man gave him one simple piece of advice: ATMs don't make money, the right location does. That single sentence changed David's mindset. He removed the machine from the small store and decided to relocate it to a busy gas station. It was a risky decision, but that one move would soon change the course of his life forever. The very next week, David met with the owner of the gas station. The owner listened carefully, then he asked, "What's in it for me?" David replied, "You'll receive a share of every transaction." The owner smiled. "If we both make money, then we've got a deal." A few days later, the ATM was installed at its new location. The gas station sat beside a busy highway where thousands of vehicles passed by every single day. On the very first day, David opened a mobile app. 23 transactions. He couldn't believe it. His previous location hadn't generated that many transactions in an entire week. 1 month later, he ran the numbers. His earnings were nearly 4 times higher than the previous month. That's when he realized success in the ATM business doesn't come from simply owning an ATM. It comes from choosing the right location. Over the next 6 months, David didn't spend his profits. Instead, he used the money to buy a second ATM, then a third, and then a fourth. Before installing each new machine, he asked himself the same question: does this location have heavy daily foot traffic? If the answer was yes, only then would he install an ATM there. 2 years later, David owned 12 ATMs. His income was no longer dependent on a single job. He had built multiple streams of income. That day, he handed in his resignation. But before leaving his job, he made one rule for himself, a rule that later saved him from major financial losses. Never put all your money into a single business. That simple principle became the foundation of his next success. 3 years had passed. By now, David owned 12 ATM machines. People kept asking him the same question: is this business really that simple? Do you just install an ATM and the money starts rolling in? David would always smile and say, if it were that easy, everyone would be doing it. The truth was, after choosing the right location, the most important part of the ATM business was cash management. Every week, David made sure each machine was fully stocked with cash, because if an ATM runs out of money, customers simply walk away. And it's not just one customer you lose. Many of them won't come back to use that ATM again. There was another habit that set David apart from everyone else. He never installed an ATM in places that already had several machines. Instead, he looked for businesses where people frequently needed cash. Places like barbershops, coin laundries, small restaurants, gas stations, nightclubs, convenience stores. He always said, where people use more cash than cards, that's where an ATM belongs. One day, a young man asked him, "If I only have $10,000, can I still start this business?" David replied, "Absolutely, but start with just one ATM. Make that one successful first, then use its profits to buy the next one. It's far better to grow one machine at a time than to borrow money and buy 10 all at once." 5 years later, David owned more than 40 ATM machines. He was no longer just operating ATMs. He was also teaching others how to build the business. His greatest success wasn't the number of ATMs he owned. It was the quality of the decisions he made. 6 years later, David's life had completely changed. He no longer went to an office every day. But that didn't mean the ATM business ran itself. He always told people, it's passive income, but it's not zero work. Every month, he reviewed the performance of every ATM he owned, which machines were getting the most transactions, and which ones were slowing down. If an ATM's transaction volume started to decline, he didn't just wait and hope things would improve. He moved the machine to a better location. He always said, "Don't make decisions based on emotions. Let the numbers guide you." One day, a journalist asked him, "If you had to start all over again today, what would you do differently?" David answered without hesitation, "I'd start with just one ATM and spend the first 6 months learning. Once I knew the business was working, only then would I buy a second machine." Then he shared one more important lesson. Too many people want to get rich too fast, so they buy 5 or 10 ATMs right from the start. But if the location turns out to be wrong, their losses become 5 or 10 times bigger. That's why he gave every beginner the same advice. Learn first, then expand. Today, David's ATMs are operating across multiple states in the United States. The biggest lesson from his journey wasn't just about ATM machines. It was about building a business with patience, careful research, and steady growth. Closing. If you've ever thought about starting an ATM business, remember these principles. A great location is more valuable than an expensive machine. Start with just one ATM. Reinvest your profits back into the business. Learn the business before you expand. Focus on building a strong foundation instead of chasing quick wealth. So, would you start an ATM business if you had the opportunity? Let me know in the comments. If you had the investment, would you choose an ATM business or a different business? If you enjoyed this American business success story, please like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe to the channel for more real-world business stories and financial insights.